Okay, we're recording. Hello, everyone. This is Conscious Parenting with Astrology. I'm your host, Dominique. And today I'd like to introduce you to a wonderful mother in our group, Melody Carroll. I always want to say Carol first, but you have two first names, right? Melody Carroll. She is one of the moms in our astrology group. And we're going to be talking today about astrology for supporting parents raising more than one child, multiple children in the house. So I only have one child. I'm just raising my son. And so it's been great for me. I have learned so much. It's astrology for parenting has been proven through my personal experience, but I only have one. And so I only have the experience of one. And I know that astrology can help, parents with different, numbers of children, siblings, but I don't have that experience. So I wanted to have you on because you have 4 children, right? So you have had lots of experience and you've applied this. And from our talks, you've really come up with a lot of what I think are great strategies for navigating different personalities in one house, right? So
yes, thank you.
So let's dive in. I'm going to have you introduce yourself. Tell us your sun, moon, and rising, about your family, how many kids you have, how you came to astrology for parenting. Tell us about yourself.
Mm-hmm. All right, great. Thanks so much. It's what a fun pleasure this is. Yeah. And before I forget, I just have to say, I'm named after my aunt who just passed a few years ago, and Carol is her name. And so the fact that she came first is just, wow, that's amazing to me. She was my dad's sister.
So is Carol your middle
that
name?
Was kind of special. Carol's my middle name.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Thanks.
Thank you.
So thank you. Mm-hmm. I'm a Cancer sun, Cancer rising, and a Taurus moon. I have 4 children. Mm-hmm. I have a Capricorn, a Libra, an Aquarius, and a Sagittarius. Let's see. I came to astrology out of conservative religion. I left after 40 years in a very strict upbringing, and very as a Cancer, very intuitional, very drawn to story and symbology. And so I literally was leaving a whole bunch of symbology behind and looking for something else, looking for a worldview, looking for something that would underpin a new way of looking at life. And I found astrology, and it was like coming home. I felt like I just walked into a language that I'd been speaking my whole life and just didn't know, and it had actually been denied to me. So it was amazing because it did help me with understanding my children. I discovered it and had my first reading 3 days after my youngest was born. And that was 9 years ago, and I couldn't stop. I started staring at their charts online. I got every book that I could find out of the library, and that's how I got my start.
Ever since, right? That's crazy. Yeah. So
pretty much. I was kind of shocked when the charts would start showing up in my head and spinning when I heard my children talking, or when I watched something playing out in our relationships dynamics.
Oh, it never ends. It never ends. That's one thing. Once it's in there, I mean, once you know something, you can't unknow it. And it's living all the time around you. So you got first into it, you had readings done. What are the other things that you did? What kind of things brought you the most insight? Was it the readings? And where did it go from there? Tell us about the journey a little bit.
Sure. So my mentor did my chart at first, and we got through it pretty quickly. And he, knowing that I was a Cancer, offered to do my family's charts while we were in session. I said, "Oh, please, if you would," which meant not only did I get the felt sense of what every piece of my chart meant for me, but then I could take it and see how it was different for my family. And as a Cancer, I'd already done a lot of relationship feeling out with my family. That's just kind of how we're built. Absolutely. And so hearing him then translated into symbolism and words and feelings helped me be more informed with, at the time, my 9 through newborn children. So I had 2 elementary school children and a preschooler and an infant, and it was fascinating.
So when you got that reading, when you got the readings and you learned all the charts, you did your family, was there sort of one thing that jumped out at you, or something that you chose to sort of work with, or was it all of it? Did you take it all in? Because I'm thinking it's a lot for a lot of people. You know what I mean? I usually stick to the big 3 to begin with. Did he do that, or did he give you like a big picture?
Sure. He gave me the big picture. He did. But the thing I discovered, and the first work I did, and this is good. This is a good personal starting point. The first work I did was I was able to reconcile my identity as a mother. I in the conservative upbringing, everything that a woman should be is a wife and mother and stay home and nurture, and at the same time I received messages from very influential people in my life that said I was made for something more than that, and that I would be brilliant in business or administration, which is true, which is very true, but even though the big social picture of the society I was growing up with was women should be doing these things, I was also alongside encouraged to do something different. And I tried to do that, and in the process rejected my little girl desires that were very, very real, to have a family of my own, and to be able to make money, have a business, administrate whatever from the comfort of my home, which is a very Cancerian thing to want to do. But as a little kid, you take that and go, well, I think I can have whatever I want. And somewhere it stuck. I think I can do all of it if I want to. But literally, it was that first reading. It was like he started talking about how Cancer is the mother of the zodiac,
right?
And it's very mothering energy. And it was like it just clicked for me. I went, oh, you mean I'm allowed to acknowledge this whole big piece of myself and who I am? And from there, I mean, it just blossomed. I mean, that was part of it. And that's why I love what astrology can do for anybody, is because if you've got a talented, insightful astrologer who can really feel into your energy, and it's a good match,
yes,
they will help you see things about yourself that you've been not seeing. That's or true. Not able to look at, or not listening
I'm a Cancer rising. We're both Cancer risings. And I've connected with a lot of Cancer rising women. I have another friend who's a Gemini and Cancer rising. She's in our group as well. But I had a child experience as well. And my childhood experience with my parents divorcing and my mom being single, I put up walls. I didn't want to be a wife or mother. I was afraid to have those things because what my experience was. And so I shut that down, and I had a reading, and it was sort of like, these energies of babies are around you. And if you don't open your heart, if you don't really open your heart, you're going to miss out on having what you really, truly want. And I was like, oh man, I got to figure this out. And now I'm like, I realize I'm supposed to be a mother. You know what I mean? It's part of my destiny, because look at where I am now. Like, conscious parenting with astrology is like, and here I am, I have this Aquarius sun and a moon in Libra in the 4th house of home and family, and a Cancer rising. I'm like, now after all these years, it makes sense that I'm supposed to take this unconventional tool to help families and moms. But back then I was like, I don't want none of that because I don't experience. No, thank you. So but yeah, that's a sidebar. I know we're going to have lots of great talks. So and I knew once we get going, we could probably sidebar. So we'll try and stay on track for this one. So you've got all this great insight about your kids now. So when and how did you start sort of implementing it into your daily life? And how often did you find yourself referring to it? And it's hard because I know some
It
are
was
older.
gradual.
Yeah.
Right. It was gradual. I think the first hit I got is that story that you love. So I'll start there.
Okay.
The first hit I got was with my Aquarius preschooler at the time. I'd been told about Aquarius and how amazing they are, humanitarian, want to improve the earth. And I knew she was strong. She has like 8 or 9 things in Aquarius. When we show the charts, it'll just be a few, but because I pulled a lot out, but she's got a lot. It's almost all.
Wow.
So he told me she's going to be very much like this. And I listened, but she's still little, right? She's still a preschooler. Like how much development, how much of her personality is going to show.
Right.
And I think that's why it made such an impact in my mind and in my parenting, because I saw something that if I hadn't been paying attention, I could have blown up. Yeah. So my children were homeschooled. My boys were homeschooled for the early elementary years, and my daughter was watching PBS with them in the afternoons after our school assignments were done. And I didn't really think much of it, but one day she's grabbed a packing slip. You got packing slips, and they slip out of things and laying on the floor. She grabbed one, and she grabbed a pencil, and she came around and she was asking all of us to sign her petition. Now, she'd been watching a PBS show. It was about petitions. So I'm sure I could have, she's just repeating what she saw. But the fact of the matter is, there's a reason she was attracted to that particular. She could have done the one about the pyramids or any other thing. She picked that one. Why? She's an Aquarius. She cares about changing the world. And even if she never goes on and does signing petitions to change the world, I still knew at that moment she was acting in who she knew herself to be as much as she did at the time.
And a lot of
so
that
rather than just blowing it off,
too, at a young age like that,
right,
instinctual.
Right. And so, yes. And as her mother, instead of blowing it off, and I could have played along, but like instead of just playing along, I like recognized this is really important and we need to so I walked with her around the house to everyone else and said, will you please sign our petition? Will you please sign our petition? And it was a very minor thing. She wasn't even clear on what we were signing about. She just wanted to do it. And to me, that was the beginning of just looking and listening for those types of things in their charts as I kept studying their charts.
Yeah. And so then how does it help you navigate your day? You know, like if you're juggling homeschool or chores or just everything in life that you're juggling and you have 4 kids of different ages and stages and developments, how does that help you? How does astrology and the knowledge of that help you sort of manage it all?
Yeah. I'm in a narrow application of that. I can see in your question so many ways to take it. Yeah. But as far as what I do, I let it inform my knowing of who the children are and then how I approach them in whatever situation. For instance, knowing that I'm going to go back to the same child, knowing that the Aquarian child has a Gemini moon and that big feelings are overwhelming to her and she does not want to she kind of just wants to let it stay light and doesn't like the deep things. I approach her differently than my Pisces moon child, yep, who feels everything and shares it and has to. The youngest has the Pisces moon, and man, she kind of took me for a ride. I did not know what to do with her for a while. But honestly, when things came out of her mouth Mommy, I just need to cry about it for a while and then I'm going to be okay. Mm-hmm. Can I go to my room so I can cry for a bit? And she taught me. So it's the partnership and the allowing. I'm certainly not a perfect parent. I'm sure I shut things down when I shouldn't, but like, it's the allowing them to tell me and listening to them and observing them, like you've said, that's super important, because I can't just assume they're a mini me.
Yeah, I loved when you had said that you wait to see sort of what role you need to play in a moment. The supporter, the guardian, the protector. You sort of assess. It's like you have all this stuff in the back of your mind, but you sort of assess. You have to assess in the moment. You observe and you assess. Okay, this one needs that. This one needs this. I mean, that's really, really great. And you're not just trying to go, okay, everybody has to do this. You know what I mean? Like, you're just, okay, you
It
really
doesn't work
have
that
to,
way.
it doesn't work, right? And I think you had mentioned something about teams, like how you sort of, yes, like tell me, like there were the team thing just lit up. When you told me a little bit about the team.
I did a little bit of comparing of our charts. I put them together. I tried to see what signatures we had that were similar. So my partner and I share, my co-parent and I share water signs. He is also Cancer rising. But we also have strong air signatures, which basically, if you put air and water together, you can get a lot of different things. But for us, we tend to emphasize emotional intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
And we have we started homeschooling early. We didn't continue, but we kept a culture of education in our home. And so that emphasizes the air, and the air and the water together kind of informs how we parent, how we do life as a family. So then when I looked at the children together and kind of saw the way just watching the way they interact, you'll find that some click better than others. And it's not that, some won't click. You can dig into the reasons why. But when I watched the pairings, and it's 1 and 3 and 2 and 4, and I looked at their charts together, 1 and 3 and 2 and 4, I found that my first and third child, the first one has an Aquarius moon, and the third one is an Aquarius. And then my second child is a Libra sun, and my fourth child is Libra rising. And so when they were, not all of them are still interested in hearing about astrology. I've got teenagers, but when they were all interested and they were helping me and we were discussing it a lot, I called them Team Libra and Team Aquarius. And now it's become this shorthand thing. When I say Team Aquarius, the two know who they are. And when I say Team Libra, but I could have just as easily said Team Virgo, because both my boys are Virgo rising. Yes. I could have just as easily done something different. And I still could. But
as they grow,
there's
and
lots of ways to do it.
Yeah, maybe just at the time, that's what you were sort of getting from them, was that energy with all the air and everybody's learning, right? But as they get older, they start working or whatever, I mean, like maybe that will shift. But yeah, I think it's still something that came up that you put together using astrology that helped you go, oh, I can manage this a little better with this great little tool. And it's fun for them. Hey, we're Team Aquarius and we're Team so it can be a fun way to bring, for those who want to bring astrology into their home, to do that. And a fun way for kids always want to make learning fun, right? That's the only way they really learn is when they're enjoying it. Right. So I think that's,
if I had it to do over again, I probably would have created some rituals at the developmental stages where there are markers. Mm-hmm. Like at year 7, there's a developmental switch from childhood into like school age.
That's the first Saturn square.
And that's the opening Saturn square. And that's kind of a big deal. But like, nobody knows that, nobody recognizes it. And I mentioned it to my youngest because she was probably one of the few that I paid attention by that time. Mm-hmm. But I have mentioned the Jupiter return to like by that time I knew. So I'm like, hey, it's your Jupiter return year. Is there anything, that makes you think of, any growth opportunities that you think you'd like to move into? How do you feel you're growing? that kind of
And a lot
stuff.
of times the Jupiter return can be, people outside the home that start to influence him, like like teachers and, people that
Yes.
sort of
Yes.
expand their view and knowledge of the world outside of the home, because that Saturn square is that personal authority, and they start to like be outside the home a little bit more. And then there's, people they can maybe look up to,
Yes.
That's
Yes.
cool. So what would you say has been, it sounds like the biggest impact is that tool for like the biggest impact it's had on you, or the difference it's made in your life as a parent. So I think you were telling me it had to do about like your, this area of like reflection or projection.
Oh, yes. It's really helped me. It's really helped me distance. So, I think even people who don't give a lot of credence to astrology could absolutely see that this is a projection. And I don't think projecting actually disqualifies it. I think it makes it a helpful tool. And the reason I like seeing the projection of a child on a page and how it differs from mine is it helps remind me this is their gauge for life. Like if you think about it in terms of gauges on a vehicle, gauges on an airplane, gauges on a boat, you've got to track things. You've got to track the horizon. You've got to track how much fuel you have. There's lots of different things you have to pay attention to depending on where you're going and what kind of vehicle you're taking to get there. And my vehicle is very different than theirs. And one of the things that you and I have talked about is I strongly feel that as children, we make vows because of whatever wounding we receive from our parents, intentional or unintentional. We make vows as children as to how we're going to parent. And quite often, it's possible to give birth to a child who's going to absolutely need the exact opposite of what your vow requires you to do. And if you don't allow yourself to have the distance to see that, you can perpetuate generational injury through the years. And if we never stop it, we never stop it. And I think conscious parenting, just in the phrase itself, is how we stop. Yeah. And it's never too late. It's never too late to start conscious parenting. I have unconscious parenting moments all the time.
Sure.
But as soon as I realize it, I know, okay, you know what? I can start being conscious now. And how can I engage this unconscious piece that just came up?
Yeah. And
do something different. Yeah. And demonstrate to my children that it's possible to apologize, to change something, Absolutely. To renegotiate. So important.
Yeah. I mean, clearly I made a vow as a child. I wasn't going to be a mom, right? Somewhere. And luckily I became one. And so when I knew instantly, with my son being like all water, a lot of water, right? He was, I call him an Uber Pisces because he has like 6 planets in Pisces: Sun, Moon, Mercury, Mars, right?
Oh, wow.
And I thought, oh my gosh, all this water, like I'm an air person, like I've just Cancer rising. I don't have a whole lot of water, but I have, and you mentioned this too, I have air planets in water houses in the 4th and the 8th, so I'm all about the emotional intelligence. I'm all about the feelings. And people say I'm a lot more sensitive than you might think I am. I think that's why. But when I saw that water, I was like, oh my gosh, how am I going to like relate? I'm really going to have to find a way to drop into my emotions and my feelings. And I knew it would be really sensitive. And it has been like a struggle at times, and I realized as I got older, all that Pisces is in the 11th house, which is the house of Aquarius.
Oh, wow.
So I was like, wait a minute. So once he was able to talk, once he started speaking, because in the beginning when they can't, that's I think priceless about knowing astrology when they're babies, because people, oh, you can't, what can you do? The moon, I mean, knowing what I could know because he couldn't talk to me, I was like, I needed to talk to him, and I can't talk to him yet. so it gave me this.
Right.
This child just really needs to be held. He's going to cry, and he's not even going to know why. I'm not even be able to say anything to make it feel better. I'm going to have to just hold him. And luckily he's like a Taurus rising, is the best hugs. And I like to snuggle, and so we
Oh,
definitely like, it was just all
yeah.
about that, and he just always had to have his hand on my neck. I don't know, he's a Taurus rising and he always had to hold me right here. And
There you go.
he's
Well,
crazy, right? Always. He still
something
does.
about it.
So I realized though, as I
Wow.
got older and could
It's amazing.
talk, I was like, the placement in the 11th house, that's Aquarius. This kid is going to talk. We are going to be able to communicate. I mean, I knew his
Yes.
Venus conjunct my, no, his Mercury conjunct my Venus, or the opposite, I think it is. Yeah. So I knew, yeah, his Aquarius Mercury, or his Pisces Mercury in my Aquarius, whatever. So the point is, yes. So he was able to talk to me and he felt comfortable and safe talking to me, and he still does. And so I was like, thank you for that position. But also he teaches me to really settle in and just allow myself to feel and, step out of the mind. And I remember one time I got him into doing a new moon ceremony with me. I was like, I'm gonna write things down, and then do you want to let go of, right? And then you burn it. He's like all into it. And I said, I think I've got everything written down. Do you? And he said, yeah, we read them to each other. I said, do you think I need anything else? He's like, yeah, maybe you need like one more. And I was like, okay. He's like, well, maybe you should not, what did he say? I think it was, not be so hard on yourself, Mom. Or give yourself a little bit more, a little, go easy on yourself or something like that. I was like, what? Okay. It was like totally poignant. And like, so I'm like, dang, this child observes me too. Right. And he's teaching me too. He's right. And I teach him that too.
It's such a great partnership.
It is, it really is.
Yeah.
And
the parent-child partnership is amazing.
It's priceless, man. And I feel very, lucky that I've had this as this like great tool. But I mean, I had him saying he was a Pisces when he was a baby. You know what it was, you know what I mean? By Pisces rising,
yes.
I mean, Pisces moon, Pisces sun. But, he knows he is now. And I remember another great thing I learned was he's in art class and he started doing watercolors. He's learning watercolors. And he came out of class one day and he said, he had finished something. It looked so great. And he said, the teacher said I'm like really good at watercolor, really like extra good at watercolor. And I was like, really? You're a Pisces, right? You know how you're a creative Pisces, right? And he's like, yeah. I was like, Pisces is a water sign. He's like, what? Like,
there you go.
like that's why I'm so good at watercolors, maybe. And I was like, I don't know. I'm just connecting dots.
Well,
I do.
That's right. That's right.
That's right. I mean,
you got to see the patterns and do something about them.
Yeah. So, but I just, I just always think to myself, wow, I wonder how parents who have more than one child, and you're trying to balance all these different personalities in the house together, I feel like I wanted to have you on to like talk about that because I'm not in that boat. I don't have that experience. So I know how my experience has been, but it's important, and let's talk about the importance of knowing our own chart first, because parenting really begins with us.
Absolutely.
Right. And no matter how many you have.
Yes.
So, and you learn your chart and the differences between yours and theirs. How often do you look at their charts in relation to yours? Is always yours? Is it, how does that work for you in terms of when you're working through your parenting in those moments?
Right. Yeah. Sometimes I make up stories with those. And I just want to be really clear on that. The making up the stories is a very human, psychological thing to do. And that's how astrology works. And as long as you remember that you are making up stories and that they can change at any given moment, then I think it's
absolutely. Yeah, you don't want to. You're not defining them. You're not defining them. You're witnessing and observing and seeing it come to life, right? Yes. That's like I had said the other day. It's you learn and learn and learn, but then you have those moments like the petition or like the art class when you're like, I'm really good at watercolor, and it's like, cool. Like
Right.
Pisces, my creative Pisces is good with watercolor. Like, of course he is, you
Yeah,
know?
of course.
But it reveals
Totally.
itself. You don't go, oh, he's
Right.
going to be this, he's going to be that, you know?
Right.
You just, I mean,
Yeah.
creativity is vast, right? And
The
every
child
sign is
inhabits
creative.
the energy.
Yeah.
Yeah, the child inhabits the energy, and they're the authority because they're experiencing it. And even if as close attention as I can pay super close attention and still miss things going on inside of them because they're holding the energy. And so if they correct me or say that's not true, they're the authority because they're the ones who inhabit the chart, not me. Same with my clients. I mean, they, I can do my best intuiting and listening to the stories, but it's always you're the authority because you're the native.
I think that's a
And that
good
leads me
one.
back to knowing my own chart.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. It's important. And the more I work with my own chart, the challenges in it, the things that I catch myself in, the way it develops like a photograph, and I see new things in it all the time because I'm still growing and the energy is changing and I'm meeting new things.
Yeah.
It helps. The more experiences I have knowing my chart, and the more I go backwards through time and look at things and remember how I was feeling or look at situations I was in and check the chart out, then it helps me look at their chart and make suggestions. I'm not sure if I'm answering your question the way you want, but like because I have the mileage, and that's part of what we come to the children with mileage and experience. That's what we have to offer. And they have this fresh look on the world. I like my mileage.
Yes, I do too. I like your term too.
Yes. Yeah. So I'm not really sure that answered your question.
For sure. I mean, we had talked about that before, but yes, I mean, I think that ultimately, and I think even though you want to give tips for how to parent your child based on their chart, it's just key that it always comes back to you. And you're going to see things in your own chart manifest through them, right? Aren't they projecting sort of at you? Or like, if I'm struggling with something, if I'm having a bad day, there'd be times where when my son was young and I was like at my wit's end, seemingly with him, right? And I would come and I'd be like, I would pull up my chart and just look at it and see what was happening, where the moon was, whatever. And 9 times out of 10, I was like, of course.
Oh yeah.
This is where, I mean, like, of course, you know what I mean? And I mean, there were many times where I said, because I was trying to consciously parent and I knew I was imperfect and we were going to, I was going to fall into my unconscious moments. I'm not perfect. I would always, I need a moment, mommy needs a timeout, and relax and come back and reflect.
Yeah.
And almost always my chart would come to mind, or almost always what was happening astrologically at the time that I knew of would come to mind, and anytime there was a situation with him, I mean, I can't even tell you how many times I thought I would see his chart in my head or just remember all that Pisces, and just anytime he really had a lot of emotion coming up and everything. And I just always was like, so, keyed in on, wow, okay, there it is. You know what I mean? Not always knew how to deal with it.
If one of my kids surprises me, right, or something unexpected happens, especially, and I don't know how to handle it, just going to the charts, just because personally I'm drawn to it. It helps sum me down. It gives me a minute, but it also helps me construct a story, or because I know who they are, maybe I change an approach. Like, I tend to want to go address an issue immediately, but not all my kids are cool with that. It's just not, they need, the one needs to cry it out before she's ready to discuss it. I have a child who had some developmental delays, and when they were triggered emotionally, they would lose all verbal capacity. And I didn't discover astrology till later, but sure enough, I mean, looking at the Pluto, Mercury conjunct the sun opposite Saturn and square to Mars, well, that explains some serious temper tantrums. Hello? Yeah, if you tell this kid no, he's going to scream about it. And if you try to restrain him, same deal. So
and so
it was helpful, not because it explained who he is or what he's going through. It was just helpful to see it reflected in yet another place that you're not crazy. You're not doing things wrong. There are things going on outside of your awareness, not what you signed up for. And yet here it is. So you've got to deal with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my gosh, like 3 questions came to my mind while you were saying that. Which do I want to ask first? Okay, the first one is okay, so I know a lot of people with more than one child have like that sibling rivalry thing that happens, so when you have 2 kids, in a spat or whatever, and they handle things differently, like how do you handle when there's sibling rivalry happening? Because I know that's really big, and kids, my friends' daughters are always fighting, and Joseph's like, oh my God, you guys are always fighting. So like, how do you navigate when the kids are in conflict?
Yeah. I dive into their uniqueness. And that may be specific to my family. We kind of emphasize uniqueness. Like we are one and we are separate. We're a little bit like the United States. You're all got your own needs and we are a family together.
Very important too.
And so I dive into that because it is crucial in life to learn how to harmonize with people who have a conflict with you, and no better place than in the family.
Absolutely.
If at all possible. Now there are families that have birthed conflicting personalities that cannot harmonize. I'm not going to deny that that's a reality. It's true. But as best as I can, I try to mediate. For a while, I think kind of what we talked about earlier, I kind of mediated too much after a while. And I had to, when a lot of them were really young, I had to stop and say, you are more than capable of working this out. And apparently I've stepped in too much, and now you're all just coming to me to solve all your problems. And, I'm pretty sure there was some Saturn squares going on for a couple of my kids at that time. Cause it's like, no, you have your own authority and you need to work out harmonizing this. Cause if you don't, it's not going to work out on the schoolyard either.
Yeah, exactly. They need to learn how to problem solve for sure.
Yeah. So I look for meetings and oppositions in their charts. So if they've got things that are on top of each other, or if they've got things that are opposed, and then I try to translate. Okay. Because quite often they'll be speaking the same language, the same exact words, but they'll actually mean 2 very different things, or they'll be trying to go for something different, even though they're using the same words. And if I can't get to that underlying symbolism and the psychology behind it, I can't help them get around it. They just stay stuck in the words that they've put together because they don't know how to get off of it.
And without knowing the astrology, you wouldn't know that at all. You would just have this like,
right.
And they're all saying the same words, but you're trying to figure out what they both mean. And you wouldn't have that underlying like go-to of, okay, I know how you're operating. I know how you're operating, even though you're both saying the same thing. It doesn't mean the same thing.
Yes.
And so
I feel like we need to get into actual specifics.
Okay.
Because I feel like you and I get it because we practice it, but people who we haven't said anything specific about that. And I feel like we might need to share a chart or 2 to show like how that looks and what it means.
Yes, sounds good.
Yeah. Let me pick a child. Which child is this?
Pick a child, any child.
I'm going to pick this child. Pick a child. Okay. So here, remember we talked about a square to Mars.
Yep.
And I've taken most of the outer planets out, but there's a Saturn's over here for this birth chart. So there's a square, and this is the child who Mercury retrograde, would lose a communication ability when he
Oh,
was
good. This
really,
is one
really
of the
upset.
questions I had. Great. Go ahead.
So he would lose his ability. He would scream. I'd have to put him in a room and like actually hold the door shut because he was actually a danger to me and the baby.
Oh.
And he would tear his room apart. And I kid you not, once he would settle down, he'd come back out, and it was almost like talking to a psychologist, because he would literally be able to say to me, "Mommy, when you it made me feel," and so I had to tip all the bookshelves over in my room.
Wow.
But he did not have any of that ability to speak while he was feeling it. And this is, I mean, once I wasn't into astrology then. So, but once I saw this, I was like, oh my God. Okay. Now, sibling. Let's look at a sibling next. I'll just,
wait,
go ahead.
Don't change that. One question for you. So
I'm not.
Yeah, for one question for you. Okay, so a new mom, for example, who has a new baby, and they get the chart and they see that configuration, and they might learn or read something about that scares them. Okay, the potential for ... to happen, because I've noticed this in the group, and people ask questions because they're reading things that are written negatively or negative manifestations
that are scary.
And they get scared and they get worried. So, and hindsight is the best way to learn, but to use it going forward. So what advice would you give someone if you saw one of these in your newborn child and you knew astrology the way you do now? I mean, my
first,
go ahead. What's your first thought?
My first principle is anything can be overcome.
Yeah.
Anything can be overcome. And in fact, you don't know what your child's mission is in life. You don't know how they're going to build. Like, it's one of those things we don't like to think about very much, but we don't know how a child's brain builds, how it approaches the world.
Yeah.
It's happening. They're not blank slates when they're born, and they're figuring everything out as they grow. And we literally have no control over what the child thinks or how they're building, in their brain, how the world works.
Yeah.
And their mission in life may require some of these aspects. That's what those are called. They're aspects. It may require some of these aspects, and it might be difficult. Or they may actually fall into an easy part of their chart, build that up through their life, and then apply that strength to the challenge.
Yep.
Because we all choose how we're going to work those energies out, which is why children born in the same hospital on the same day at about the same time, they'll have a lot of parallels. Studies have been done, people have seen it, but they're not doing the same thing. They're not living the same life. They're not having the same
thing
experience,
with twins.
and they don't have the same worldview.
Yeah, even twins.
Yeah.
My best friend has twin brothers, and they're very different. Yeah, the same chart, they're very different. So yeah, it absolutely is that, thing. And I would think like I'm thinking, if I do a reading for a child, a baby or child for a parent, and I see something that is quote unquote looks challenging or a square, I mean, I obviously always, I don't say, oh, your child's going to have this or this happen, or they're going to be this way. It's just sort of like potentials. And I always look to the possibilities of what that can help them achieve. You know what I mean? Or the possibility for growth through that potential challenge,
Astrology has come down to us over millennia.
Yeah.
People have been studying the stars, and it's come through the Dark Ages.
Yeah.
And it's one of the things that stuck through the Dark Ages. And the Dark Ages still kind of have cast a shadow on astrology. And that's why I start with that, because it is built into our nature to want to watch for danger and for the bad things. And that's a protective function.
Yeah.
But you want to also be careful that you don't hold on to it because you're so worried and you continue to, again, it's that projection factor.
Yes.
Like you don't want to project what your fear and your worry onto your child. They'll feel it.
Yes.
And that's also not to scare. It's just like, take some breaths.
Yeah.
Model how to
Yeah.
handle the things that are challenging in life.
Yeah. And don't be afraid to ask for help where you need it.
Right. That
know?
too. I've had astrologer friends like sit down with me and say, hey, I have a child who his Chiron is on, which is a wound. His Chiron is on my North Node and my North Node is on his Chiron. And gosh, I had myself in a corner. I said, it looks like my life mission is right on his wound and his life mission is going to hit mine. And they were like, okay, sure. Or the way you heal yourselves will propel each other. You also have the chance for symbiosis here where you propel each other. You may have some striving, but that doesn't make it awful. That doesn't mean the whole thing's going to blow up.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, I still have that little thing. It still sticks its head up and goes, will this relationship last? Will he hate his mother for the rest of his life?
Yeah.
Which is ridiculous.
Yeah.
But it's something that somehow got put in my head and passed down, and I try to honor it, listen it, and then also listen to the other things.
Yeah.
The strengths that we have, the intention that I've set, the work that I've done on our relationship, because I have been more intentional with that child.
And I think, also you realize in that moment, the way that he responded, you're like, when you look at this now, you're like, oh my gosh, like he needed to have that outburst, but he also like totally understood and came out and shared that. And then as he gets older, that's something that you can help him embrace his own strengths to know, I need to be out of the situation to save myself and other people, to manage it. And then I can come back in and be clear about how I feel and my thoughts and share that and make decisions with a clear head and things like that. And then you can help them as they get older, I think, step more into their power and own those things that they, how they've managed to handle that square and learn and navigate it and recognize that as a strength. You know what you need to handle, X, Y, and Z. So you're going to share another one?
Yes, I am. I'm looking for it. Here we go. So this child, oh, that's not the right child. Hang on. Well, let's look at this anyway. So one of the first things that messes with people is the fact that the signs aren't in the same place as when they looked at the previous chart, right? So she's Libra rising. The other chart we just looked at was Virgo rising in the very early degrees, actually like 5 degrees. So this child, the way she takes action could absolutely rub against the way the other child comes across to her, because our ascendant is often like a rising degree is often how we come across to other people.
Right, exactly.
This child
that could irritate
absolutely wants things. Yes, it could. She absolutely wants things done the correct way. And his son is over here. His sun is at 4 degrees. So he's already got kind of the same similar trine that she does. So that could actually be a harmonizing factor.
Yeah, it's like, look, I know I like my stuff a certain way. I respect you like yours a certain way. Let's, work it out, right? Because with a Mars,
he has an Aquarius moon. He has an Aquarius moon. She has a Pisces moon. And quite often he gets super irritated with how emotional she gets. And honestly, I could absolutely blame that on she's the youngest, he's the oldest. but I continue to try and tell them all the older ones. They want to say this is about being the baby, and it's actually not about her being the baby. It's about her Pisces moon. She feels very deeply.
Yes.
And you'll be glad of it later that she feels that deeply.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest thing that astrology does. And I say, you know what? Yeah, you don't need astrology to be a great parent, to be an aware and conscious parent. Look at Dr. Shafale. She doesn't talk about astrology at all. I'm convinced she probably knows it and uses it, but you can be a conscious parent without astrology. But to me, oh my gosh, like the richness and the knowledge and the, it's, to me, it just really adds to and gives you so much more understanding and context. You know what I mean? So I'm like, yes, you could do it without it, but I would never want to.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Yep. Who's this one?
So this is my second, and he's also Virgo rising. So I tend to think that a lot of the things that when they conflict is the fact that they both have close rising degrees, and my second born has a moon right there in between their rising degrees. And that's probably part of what blows things up a little bit. They don't share a lot else in the inner planets. I expect that they aspect and interact, but since I don't have them on top of each other, it's hard to remember which ones do the thing. Here we go. So the other child had a 4-degree sun.
Yeah.
So they have suns that square. So that'll do it. That'll do it a little bit. That'll do it.
That's so fun.
Degrees sitting on top of each other mean that it can create a rivalry because you're in the same spot and you want the territory, or it can be harmonizing. That's why conjuncts aren't really labeled good or bad. They're both, because it can be harmonizing. We share this in common, or it can be territorial.
Yeah.
But with a square, it's generally the nice term is dynamic. The square is a dynamic that needs to be navigated between the two parties, and and so can oppositions. This child has an opposition between Mars and Venus.
Yeah.
And it definitely keeps his wheel going. The seesaw keeps spinning.
Oh, fascinating. So you have all this in your mind, as you're navigating these beings, and they're, watching them evolve and grow.
Yes.
And, you can problem solve and direct and, try to navigate it all. But this just gives you a lot more information to go on why things are happening the way they are, why certain child is acting a certain way, and then knowing what they need to feel good and safe, and what they need to, how they need to handle their emotions, is just gravy. I mean, it's so helpful, I think.
Yeah. I'm going to go back and say it again. I like it as a projector, because it's super easy when we observe our children, and observation is truly important, but it's super easy to project ourselves onto them.
Yes.
And removing it one step to something that's obviously symbolic allows me to look for something a little bit different, instead of seeing the child whose face looks like mine in these ways and like the other person's in another way. Like, it's sometimes we get too caught up in seeing ourselves.
But I think that's
whereas
the way you're
once I know my chart super well, I'm not seeing my chart. My chart does not look like this chart. I'm not seeing myself in it. I can see connections.
Yes.
And they are there, and the signatures will be similar, but it's very obviously not me. So
you're saying that when, like, you like the projection as a tool, but eventually once you know yourself truly, then you no longer see that projection, or that projection doesn't happen so much. You really do see them in front of you.
Well, I think the distinction I'm trying to make is that projection happens,
Yeah.
and it can be negative and it can be positive.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if we use the child only without astrology, we tend to project onto them directly. And unless I just like the astrology projecting onto the chart instead to help me remain conscious, because sometimes projecting onto another human being is too organic and it gets messy. It probably goes into the strong air signature in my chart, like that. I like to like remove it a little bit and set it over here and do the storytelling and the dissecting and the looking into emotions and making up a story and checking, but then taking it back to the child and checking the story and informing how I speak with them, or what activities they like to do while they talk to me, or you know, those kinds of things. So it's a conscious way of using projection, because I know it's going to happen and I want to be as conscious as possible when projection happens. So yes, I think what I'm trying to say.
Sense. Yeah. And I think that's a really big topic that we probably, could go into on another call even more, for sure. After Millie and I were chatting, we definitely were like, oh, we could talk about this and this and this and this. And we can go on for days. So we'll try to stick to the topics at hand. But, it's easy to veer off, you know what I mean? And as you're diving into these complex dynamics, I mean, we're all these unique, complex beings, and they are too. And, it's a dance, it's a constant dance. And it's one that we have to have compassion for ourselves in that dance, and respect for our partner in that dance. You know what I mean? Throughout the whole thing.
Totally.
So let's kind of try and wrap it up and kind of sink down to the main tips or things that we could give parents as a takeaway of steps to take or tools. So just I kind of wrote a few things down. I think for sure the first step is just, even if you know the big three, right? Everybody's like I call it the power three, because if you don't have the time or the energy or the mindset or frame to dive into astrology the way that we like to, if you're not obsessed about it, like if you just know the moon and the sun, you could get like golden nuggets for days.
A lot.
And consistently, if you have more than one child and you're just navigating the day-to-day with the moon, you could be busy for years. Right?
Yes.
You don't
have
to go any further if you don't want to, or you can't, or it's just not, in you to do. But those three elements, and just studying those and working with those, between the difference between those, yours and theirs, and the dynamic of the family, huge, right? And then like your big thing
absolutely
as a parent of 4, it's looking at the similarities and the differences, right? And using like look to dominant, lack, or how much air or water or modalities. Like I really think that the elements are another great way in. I have a little workshop I want to put together. It's actually already in kind of formation here, about elemental astrology, elemental parenting, because again, knowing your family tree just from an elemental standpoint, I mean, golden, right? You don't need to know anything else. You can really manage a day just by knowing how much fire is in your house, how much water is going down in your house, what the dynamic energetically is with the modes of fixed, mutable, cardinal. So I really think that is another easy step in if you feel overwhelmed. With astrology as a new parent. Because my thing when I was young, when I was actually not a young mom, but when I was a mom and my child was young, I started everything.
Yes, there you go.
I'm a late bloomer. I really I didn't have the time to study as much as I wanted to, because my goal was, if I'm going to be this conscious parent, I need to be present for him. And I would be here working on stuff, and he would always come right here to my desk and be like, "Mommy, mommy, mommy." He would need a hug. He would want me. And I was just like, okay, this can wait. I have to be here. Like this, I'm only going to have one.
Mhm.
I want to miss these moments. And this relationship
Right.
is why I'm trying to do all of this and learn all this. So let me just be here.
Right.
So I think it's
Right.
important for new moms to go to get, you know, learn a little bit the nuggets where you can, but just be present, because that, you know, touch and that connection is imperative, especially in the beginning, you
Totally.
know? So
Absolutely.
learning the differences, and
Yeah.
if you want to get into all the other planets, for sure, using and then seeing how those
Right.
differences in similarities inform you on how they interact, how you can interact with them, right?
Mhm.
I love what you said
Mhm.
about observing their engagement in the world as a
Yes.
way, you know, to
Yes.
find those ideas in the chart first. Like you watch them and you go, oh yeah, that's this. You know, observe them. Oh, that's
Mhm.
kind of a little bit of a manifestation of that, you know? And that I think is
Right.
a big part of the
Yes.
journey, especially when they're little. You're like seeing what they're drawn to, seeing what
Totally.
they're doing, as opposed to like, I mean, granted, my son I knew was going to be creative. So I was like, okay, I'm going to give him a few outlets. See if he's interested in this. See if he loved music. We took to music class, loved it. Didn't want to learn the piano, you know.
Yes.
Art class, sweet,
Right.
you know. But who knows what, you know, what
Yes.
that's going to turn into. And now I'm realizing with all this 11th house stuff, he's real tech savvy and he's real creative. And
Yeah.
you know, he could get into some kind of graphic
Yes.
design at some point. Like, I don't know. It's fascinating to
Sure.
wonder and see, but I still have no doubts that the astrology will be confirmed, because there's a, you know, I always say there's a thousand ways it
Absolutely.
can manifest, right? You just don't know.
Absolutely.
And there's
It's
a,
just, yeah, because we don't know how they're gonna
yeah,
meld it together, and it's wonderful to watch. What a privilege to see it as it happens.
is. It's a fascinating experience to look at this chart and look at this human and watch them both grow up and come to life and see how, you know. And I mean, there's
Mhm.
a thousand ways you
Yeah.
can interpret one position, one planet, one aspect, but that child's living it. And like you said, they're taking in the world, they're experiencing it. And that's totally different from you know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I
It
think
is.
that's really, really awesome
Amazing.
what you do there. And then there's obviously
Thanks.
readings are huge. If you,
Right.
you know, you want to do
Yes.
readings, books, I have, you know, I've noticed, because I
Mhm.
searched for years when I was a young parent for books on parenting and astrology. And there are a lot out there that were written quite a long time ago. And there's a lot of
Yeah.
great astrologers
Yeah.
now that will talk about it. I think it's Robert Hand has like a youth and astrology and youth. You know, there are some great books and astrologers who
Yes.
offer great insight, but there aren't a lot of books like current, you know, publications or newer
Mhm.
publications. So I know more and more books are going to be popping on
Yeah.
the scene around this area. I know.
Oh, yeah.
Um,
No kidding.
we're writing a children's book. Little Crab Finds a Friend. I'm partners with this author who's writing it, and I'm doing a parenting guide for the back. So this has been a project that's
Nice.
been in the work for
Nice.
years. But I'm like, timing, divine
Right.
timing. You know, we're finally getting this going, and I think you're going to see more and
Right.
more, you know,
In the
great
moment.
books and opportunities for
Absolutely.
parents, you know, to use. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and then
And I think along those lines, Dominique,
yeah,
I think I would just encourage people that if they find that they've tried an astrologer and it's a bad match, to consider shopping around.
absolutely.
Because, and one of the reasons I like to say that is that I don't like to believe that anybody's out in the world trying to do damage to other people. However, I think there are charts that don't harmonize well. And I think someone can be called to astrology and mess up. And so, you know, I like to encourage people. There are people who know I love astrology and send me this astrologer that they absolutely love. And I take one look at it and I can't stand it.
Oh yeah.
And it doesn't resonate for me and it doesn't work. Does that discredit who they are? Does that mean they're a bad astrologer? No, it means their energy isn't going in the same direction as mine, and bless them to keep doing it, because they're going to work with people that I would never be able to reach.
Yes.
And so I like to say that too, because there have been a lot of wounds and people hurt and horrible things said,
Yeah. That's
whether
why
with good intentions or not. And I like
absolutely.
to just make sure people are careful.
I agree. You should really research who that astrologer is, their approach, you know. I mean, there's so many different, you know, avenues of astrology, so many different, you know, paths and types of astrology. If you, you know, I had a friend come to me for a medical issue, you know, and I was like, this is not my domain. You know what I mean? Like,
not my thing.
I know some medical astrologers, I will point you there, but I cannot in good conscience help with this particular thing.
No.
You know,
exactly.
I totally agree. And you do have to find your thing. And I think that's, you know, there's a lot of young astrologers coming up, and that's awesome.
Yes.
And then there's a lot, you know, of people who've been around forever that really like know the history and the depths and the foundations. And I really love the psychology side and the really like the growth and transformation that astrology can bring. I'm a like transformation queen with my 8th house sun. Like it's transform, solve, or die, right? That's part of the journey. So I like to go deep. I like to explore, but not a lot of people do. And the surface stuff is fun. And I think most good astrologers are very, very careful and conscious of what they say. And I know a lot of astrologers don't even do child readings. And this is, I think, in the community, a little bit of a, you know, a tough spot, you know, that they think you know, by doing that, you're putting them in this box, or you're, you know, projecting things on their lives. And I personally,
projection. Yeah.
Yes. I don't come from that, you know? So I'm like, I'm not a predictive astrologer. I'm about, hey, I'm going to give you some elements to inform the nature of this little being. And you now go and observe and watch and learn, you know what I mean? And grow and use this to help guide your experience and your journey. But people, you know, have heard, oh yeah, they said my child's this, and this is going to happen, and this wound. And I just want to hug that mom and go, it's going to be okay, you know, because I understand it's scary as a mom.
Yes.
One of the things that I think astrology does is helps remove some of the fear. But if you have a challenging aspect in this child's chart or your own, right, it feeds right. It can feed right into the fear. It can feed right into it, you know.
Yes. And sometimes you just need a reading. You need somebody to help you work through it.
Just different perspective.
I certainly can't do my own chart when I'm in the middle of something big. I've got to get a reading from someone else.
And I mean, and I saw some things. I remember somebody telling me when I was trying to have a second child, and I had Saturn in Scorpio going through my 5th house. And I knew I was going to have challenges. I just knew it. Right. But I knew also that I had to go through the process of trying to get on the other side to make peace with, I was only going to have one child, you know, and I had people tell me because of Jupiter thing and other things happening, oh, you're going to get pregnant. You're going to get pregnant. You're going to get pregnant. Yep. I got pregnant, but I didn't have a child. You know, I lost that child. Wow. So, and I knew in my gut, I was like, and of course it was when I stopped trying, right? And then it happened, and then I lost it. And I was like, it was the process I had to go through and live through in order to make peace with the idea that I was just going to have one child, and I needed to embrace every blessing that was going to be for my life instead of that. But as soon as like the whole time I just watched the transit happen, I was like, okay, it's going to be here for a few years. It's not going to be easy. It might not happen, but I know I need to work through this emotionally, psychologically. And so I understood intellectually that I needed to just go through the process, you know? So it's, I think astrology offers really powerful, you know, insight into our experiences. And it always comes back to us. Anytime I have an issue with my child, I always look to my own chart and I'm like, yeah, this is me, you know. If you just ask yourself as a parent whenever you're in those moments, is this really them or is this really me? 99.9% of the time that mom is probably gonna be like, yeah, it's me.
It's me.
I'm still annoyed, I'm
It's
still
me.
whatever, but it's me. You know.
Yeah.
So, um,
Yeah.
but yeah, and
Yeah.
that's why I came up with that sort of I was trying to kind of figure out like what is my process, what do I do? And I was like, well, I learn and learn and learn, I study, I observed, and then I would, you know, support and navigate and then learn some more, observe some more, you know, support and guide some more.
Yes.
That's my
Yeah.
SOS, man. And so that's why I was like, oh, I have an SOS
There
strategy.
you go.
And I think it's important.
It's super simple.
It's super simple. And I'm like, that's all you have to do. You don't have to have all the answers, even though we want them, you know, we don't have to. And I think like navigating all these different little personalities in a home, you got to have a sense of humor. You got to like go with it and use what knowledge and resources you have, you know? And it sounds to me like astrology is a pretty good resource for a house full of kids and juggling all those personalities.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. When the challenges come up and there's almost no time where there isn't at least one child feeling some kind of challenge, I've got a resource I can go to. And
does that bring you peace? I mean, like, does that bring you
informs
peace in
me.
those moments?
Oh, so much. So much. Even if it's the child who doesn't really want to talk about astrology at all, it's just a translation function.
Yeah.
It's just a translation. It's just me saying, okay, well, it seems like you're dealing with, and instead of saying Saturn in the 5th house, limitations on your ability to get together with your friends or your ability to create new things. Like it seems like, right? It doesn't have to, I don't have to speak astrology to be on board with
and that's what I've done all my, I mean, Joseph's only 9 and I talk to him all the time about his chart and astrology and he doesn't know the difference. He has no idea that I'm speaking that to him.
Right.
And that I think it's important for astrologers, good astrologers, to be able to translate that because people get lost in the language if they don't really get it, you know, it can become overwhelming. So yeah, well, I love this. This is really great. And I'm so glad that we started this conversation. I know there's a lot more we could talk about. We could probably go for days. I have no idea how long we've been talking. I haven't been paying attention because I'm just like,
that's all right.
Sucked in. But do you have any other like thoughts? Like, do you feel like there's something you haven't covered or some nugget or tidbit you'd want to give parents with, you know, siblings to, I mean, I feel like all of the stuff that you've shared and that we've talked about can help whether you have one child or a house full, for sure. Because you've got dynamics between, like you said, co-parents, if there's other, you know, cousins live in the house, you know, there's all kinds of dynamics. But even, you know, the trio, the mom, the dad, and the child, like me, I mean, I know the dynamic of my family, and you need to know whether you have one child or 4, because you're still navigating multiple personalities. But when a mom isn't, you know, raising,
people are still relating whether they're related or not.
Exactly.
So you can compare charts no matter what relationship you're in. And I pretty much stuck with the parent child because that's what we're speaking to today. But I guess the only other thing I would say is it helped me to look at my family of origin as well. But I am the oldest of 4. And so it related to my personal experience, and then looking at my siblings' charts and my parents' charts kind of helped me put some more relationship dynamics together.
Oh yeah. I mean, that could be a whole nother show for sure, because definitely I think
it's just a lot, right? I don't like to throw too much.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that was one of the first things I did before I had children and I was learning astrology and learning myself, evolving, growing. I looked at my parents, and I mean, it told the story. I understood so much better who my father was. I could have a better relationship with him. Like, it's profound, the changes that have come in my life from me understanding my family's astrology. And they don't they're not into it necessarily. My, dad's not into it, doesn't necessarily believe in it at all, really. But they don't need to know because I have the knowledge and I can make the choices and choose the type of relationship I'm going to have. And it's like, how somebody's built, you automatically have more compassion, understanding for who they are and how they operate in the world. And you can then respond. And I think that works when you have multiple children in a household, or between the two of them, when you as a parent are trying to help them relate the best way, or problem solve, or friendships, even if our kids and their friends. I think that that's a big thing with an only child, is friends, and an 11th house only child. His friends are everything, right? He misses his friends all the time. But then when he sees siblings, fighting and stuff, he's like, okay. Like, why are you fighting? You have a sibling, But even friendships, they're built different, they come home and they tell you about a friend and how they were behaving. And you're like, you've got to navigate those things too. So he knows himself better and can go back and problem solve on his own, So I do think that these are great tips that talking to you bring to how you navigate when you have more than one child. But at the core of it, you can use these things in every relationship, and whether you have one child or, 4. I just think it's probably a lot. I'd imagine.
I'm so glad we did this.
Me too. I love it. I just imagine it can be a lot more mental capacity and a lot more to juggle when you have more than one,
It can be. Thankfully, I didn't get 4 thrown at me at once. That might have been different.
That's true. Spaced them out good. That's true. Awesome.
Gradual.
Well, oh my gosh, Melody, thank you so much. And I think we'll wrap up, but I'm so glad that we did this, and we've been talking about it for a while. We've been getting to know each other. I've really enjoyed getting to know you, and I'm so glad you're in the group. Keep involved there and helping people. And I want to do more of these with you. And
absolutely,
if you parents in the group or wherever you're listening really like this conversation or want to join this community of moms who love astrology and astrology for parenting, please come to Conscious Parenting with Astrology Moms group on Facebook. It's a private group, and join us, join the community. We'd love to have you. And if you're in the group and you're listening to this, please, if you have more questions for Melody or me, drop them in the comments. Let's keep the discussion going. We're there. We want to build this community. It's perfect with this Aquarian energy to build this community and this group of moms and really come together and support each other, right? Takes a village, as they say.
Let's do it.
So